You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 595, where tonight we're going to break down the first issue of the new Bad Batch Hyperspace Stories series from Dark Horse Comics. This will be a full breakdown with spoilers and non-spoilers. And to help me do all that, of course, is Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
You know what? 2 weeks in a row. Happy New Comic Book Day, Albert.
I know. Well, it's, we're kind of in a, there's nothing on the small tube, nothing on the big tube. And, it gives us an opportunity, honestly, to get into some of this other stuff that we get and are, consuming and just be able to talk about. And this one was, honestly, I was super excited about it because I love the Bad Batch. And this is a way to tell more stories set even before, right back to the Clone Wars era. So like, this is super exciting. And yeah, we'll give our initial thoughts here in just a little bit. But before we do that, I know you want to say thank you to some special folks.
Yeah, I'm always super excited to talk about our Patreon members. So thank you, everyone who's a Patreon member, no matter your tier. We certainly appreciate it. A special thank you to our now part of the tribe members, Alex, Raphael, Danny, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn. And of course, our Delusions Granular members, our top tier. Now, this is Rod Racing, CJ, Steve, and Rob. Again, thank you all. If you're curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. We just did a fun episode just a couple of days ago, so it feels like we're doing this a lot sooner than we usually do, which is actually kind of cool. But yeah, so what did we do the other day? Goodness, it was on the comic book, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's comic book.
Oh no, we did Waystation.
Oh, you're talking about for Patreon. Sorry.
Yeah, for Patreon. Yeah, we did a little catch up on Waystation for some of the things we haven't done one in like 4 or 5 months, so it was a good chance to go and catch up. So if you're curious what all you may have missed, some of our opinions on some stuff that are going on. We get a little more opinionated on the Patreon show with some things, a little more personal, if you will. So we'd invite you to go check that out. We have audio and video tiers. So if you're curious, we'd like to do it. If you're listening to this, thanks for the download. cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you'd like to come out to the live stream, you could be one of these amazing people. Music Train, One versus CPU, Sky. We see some people there in the background. People are trickling in. So we thank you for coming out this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are around the world. Wherever you can hear Albert Padilla's voice, you are welcome.
Yeah. If you are within the sound of my voice, thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, sorry. That's probably more appropriate. All right, let's see. What do we got? Patreon this weekend. And Jonesy and I have been kind of hashing out what the rest of the year is going to look like. We got to get Lauren involved as well, but we've got all kinds of stuff planned. So should be fun year with a lot more to discuss. So, all right, I think let's just do that. Let's just get into this breakdown. So this is So first off, thank you to the folks at Dark Horse Comics for sending us the advanced preview copy. It allows us, gives us the opportunity to be able to kind of do it on release day. This issue just came out today. I think Music Train is already in the chat, and he mentioned that or maybe it was One Up, who mentioned that he just read the comic. So he's coming pretty fresh right off of it. But yeah, this is, so it's Hyperspace Stories. I don't know where, and I don't want to steal your thunder because I know you've got some thoughts on this too. I don't know really where this kind of fits into like everything. It's all canon as far as I'm concerned. But this, again, kind of back to what I was saying at the very top of the show, the fact that we've got the Bad Batch back and we've got Hunter and Echo, sorry, not Echo, but Tech still alive. Yeah. Super exciting. Having them, with the Jedi and still working with during that time frame with the Separatists and all that. I mean, it's just ripe for great comic book storytelling. And so I was really excited to read this comic, and I'll give you my initial thoughts. But let me you give me your thoughts first, non-spoiler, and then we'll get into the actual breakdown where we'll spoil the heck out of this thing.
Yeah, maybe just some quick setup here. So this is going to be a 5-issue series, right? All hyperspace, all through Dark Horse Comics. So 5 issues. It's about once a month or so. So this won't finish until, probably the end of June, it looks like. Hyperspace Stories, to kind of answer your question, Hyperspace Stories tend to be smaller stories. They don't do big arcs or anything like that typically. So they're kind of small stories. And historically, they have gone all over the timeline in the canon. So they kind of work themselves in. They're usually, small pieces of content. The Bad Batch series is kind of a good example of that. All this is going to be a bit of a mini series within the Hyperspace Stories banner. It does give us a chance, like a lost episode type of vibe, right? Or another mission that we didn't see on screen that you could envision being kind of a cutting room floor, or maybe just some other mission that they're on throughout these, throughout the life of the Clone Wars, which I think is great. This is where we've talked about this a number of times. The comic books can pick up these smaller stories and interject them in and come up with something fresh and new, work in some other characters that were happening in the Clone Wars period, which they do in this first issue in particular, and will continue to do throughout some of the series. And I think that's where it's kind of fun. I think you come into the Hyperspace Stories area, you come in with just wanting a fun story. Don't expect anything super heavy or even super earth-shattering like you would maybe expect from some of the flagship Marvel comics or even a High Republic Adventures in the Dark Horse space. This is really meant just to be fun. Typically, they've skewed a little bit on the younger reader side at times. I didn't get that vibe from this one as much. This kind of just felt like a traditional fun
Clone Wars episode.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of initial thoughts. Yeah, it felt like another episode of the Bad Batch, right? Again, the old school team, like the original team before Omega came in. So you have this, I love the dynamic between the guys, right? Crosshair is there. He's being a smart aleck. He's doing his thing. Everybody's still got their part of it. Wrecker's still, complaining about having to be the bait and things like that too, right? So I think that's fun. We get the vibe of the group as it was early on in the Bad Batch series and when we saw them in the Clone Wars. I think that's really cool. This was kind of a typical first issue, though. It's a little, we start in a mission, we kind of wrap it up, and then we get to the real story and what it is. And this is a little bit slow. There's not a ton of action here. There's not a ton of, really diving into what the true issues are going to be or what the true challenges are going to be. It's pretty straightforward. And so it's okay. It's an enjoyable from that front, but it's a typical first issue kind of setting you up without any real huge things. I think the character that comes in, when we get to the spoilers, we do get a character from this from the Clone Wars series and all of that that's appeared in a number of pieces of content. And I think that was maybe the kind of the big drop or whatever, but
right.
Which I thought was kind of cool, and we'll see how that plays into the series as a whole. But I think an okay start. I mean, again, nothing really crazy that you're going to go and get super excited about, but I thought it was an okay start. And I think if you frame it up with what Hyperspace Stories does, it's delivering about what Hyperspace Stories does and does pretty well. And we'll talk a little bit about the art and colors as we go through as well. But I thought it was okay, and nothing crazy special, but also nothing really wrong with it though either. I think when you compare it to what we've seen in the Marvel space, I mean, a slight tick above some of the things we've seen Marvel wise. And again, if you're just wanting a fun comic, I think this has the ability to deliver on that. We'll see where the rest of the series goes.
Right. And I agree with all of that. Like it was good. I didn't mind it. I didn't hate it. It didn't blow me away, but I do understand that, again, it was just the first issue of what you said, like a mini series of sorts. So wasn't expecting to go in thinking, wow, this is going to be earth shattering and really change the dynamic or my perspective on the Clone Wars, right? Or any of that stuff. It's nowhere near that. But at the same time, it was really cool to like be able to read the comic and then hear all the voices, right? I thought the writing was pretty good. I think they, for the most part, like I have one small piece of feedback that I was wanting that I didn't get. And I've spoiled it down there below my name. But like everybody seemed like they were in character. Hunter was kind of the leader, like you mentioned. Wrecker was being forced to be the bait, and he was always tired and just cracking jokes from time to time. Crosshair was really, really cool, very cold, calculated. At one point he fires back a kind of like a real snippy comment to Hunter about some stuff, right? And so he's got that edge of him still that we saw. Mm-hmm. And then of course Tech is Tech, and I mean I thought there was a really great job for him. So
literal as ever, yeah.
Literal as ever, right? And so all of that was like nailed perfectly. I think my only one thing that I was waiting for as I churned each page, I was waiting for Hunter to say, "Let's get to work," because that is his tagline. I mean, not many characters in Star Wars have a tagline, or a series has a tagline, but this one does, and it never made it into the pages. And I thought, well, maybe we'll get it in issue 2, or maybe they'll say it at some point, but missed opportunity as far as I'm concerned, but didn't bring the issue down. I think if you're a big fan of the Bad Batch, I don't know why you wouldn't pick this up. Like it feels again in that same spirit, in that same vein as the either Clone Wars or the Bad Batch series. If you're really into, if you're a casual, Bad Batch fan, or you're not really sure if this is your first, I don't know if this is really the first entry I would make. I'd go hit the television series first and that sort of thing. But it was good. I'm interested to see where it goes. Like there was enough, at least at the very end, for me to feel like, hey, all right, I'll pick up issue 2 and see, how much more I want to keep reading on this one.
Yeah, I like that there were some consistencies too with what we've seen in the Clone Wars about how clones are treated and where they're welcome,
Right.
things like that too. So they're
Yeah.
very consistent with what we've seen elsewhere. So it's clear that the creators understand the content of what they're stepping into. And I think if you're introducing, a younger reader to this, like your son or your daughter into the series or into comics, and this is an easy first step. The story's pretty easy to follow. There's not a lot of crazy, weird panels and text that's going all over the place. So very straightforward type of issue. It's very literal in many ways, and you do get some Jedi and things like that throughout the way, or at least towards the beginning of it. So there are things that even younger readers or younger fans will understand pretty easily so far.
Yeah. We didn't talk about the cover art. I know you've got it here for the banner in the background there, the backdrop, but I thought the cover was great. I believe that was Reese Hannigan who did the cover, who actually is the artist as well for the interior art. Although when the solicitations went out, it was advertised as Rory Coleman, who was going to be the writer or the penciler. That didn't turn out to be the case here. And we didn't get an explanation from Dark Horse. I didn't even get a chance to go look to see why there was a change.
Yeah, I didn't see anything out there from any of the artists that there was. Actually, the cover's by Valeria Favaccia, I believe is how their name is pronounced.
Did Reese Hannigan do did she do a variant? Because that was in the solicitations too. The Dark Horse solicitations had her listed as well as one other person as doing covers. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember if Hyperspace Stories really does many variants. It's been a while since I've collected the Hyperspace Stories physically, but yeah, I'm not sure. And they don't do it. Yeah, Dark Horse doesn't always tell you who the variant artists are. And the Marvel ones, they'll go ahead and give you the interior. Will tell you variant artists as well, and they'll just have them listed no matter what the cover is, just so they're all because they're just pre-printed, so it makes sense.
Yeah, this is. I pulled this up in the so we just timeout. So we get an email from Dark Horse, right, with the link to download the comic, and then there's some stuff in there about like here's what you can cover, here's when you can cover it, etc. And it gives you a little bit more details, and that's where it had the two cover artists listed. And when I noticed that, I was like, wait a minute, this seems really weird. But anyways, it's neither here nor there. The cover's great. The interior art is okay at times. It's good at times, and then other times I'm kind of like,
There's a few panels that are really good.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well.
Yeah.
Again, it kind of goes back to faces. Faces in comics are always very subjective, I think, and depending on what your preference of art style is. Again, I think sometimes they're usually really good. Like Crosshair was a good example. I think some of the scenes where we see Crosshair's face were actually quite good, and you really capture him. And he has this one pose one time, which I thought was very on the nose, very heroic looking kind of pose, which is totally not Crosshair, but it was also his swagger and his bravado kind of coming through, which I thought was really particularly fun. But then you have other moments where, there's the detail quite there. Is it kind of an odd angle? And that's kind of comic books. You take a little bit of that and you just kind of roll with it. But some panels are actually quite good. Others, whatever the reason was, it just didn't quite hit the mark for us. But we'll kind of walk through some of that here. Again, we can't really show. Dark Horse is actually rather particular and specific about what we could do, especially on release day. So not a lot of visuals today, folks. So sorry about that.
Yep. But imagine, if you will, the Clone Wars.
Albert will paint a picture for you so you can have a mental image.
No? Okay. Yeah. By that, he's going to, it means me saying Records did this and Hunter did this.
I will say this, though. Sometimes when there's the way you do chat bubbles in comics, Lauren and I talked about this when we did the Vader's Castle holiday special for Halloween. Like how you do bubbles and things like that matters sometimes. It can make a difference in the content. And it's sometimes just really tiny, teeny little things. And this one, sometimes how you get a chat bubble to finish a thought from a previous page when you've already moved on visually.
Right.
And this one, they would have a little rectangular icon with the helmet, like a kind of a sliced picture of the helmet of who was actually speaking, even though it's pretty obvious, easy to follow who it was.
Yeah.
But seeing Wrecker's helmet or seeing Hunter's helmet or seeing Tech's helmet or whatever was a nice little touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really just little details sometimes like that improve your overall enjoyment, even if you don't really realize it at the time.
Yeah. No, good point. All right, let's get into, at this point, we're going to get into all the spoilers. So turn it off, come back later after you've read the issue or read the series and watch it, please. We'd love for you to do that. So this is, of course, Bad Batch Ghost Agents. The name of this particular issue is called 4 Clones Walk into a Cantina, which is literally what happens in this episode. Shocker. Again, the writer is Michael Marici. And then we had Reese Hannigan here on pencils. So it opens quite, with a little action sequence. This is what you would expect, right? Similar to an episode. You open up with some little action sequence, and then we get into like the main flavor. But they're on a planet called Vakir, And apparently there has been a weapon that has been dispatched to this planet by the Separatists in hopes that the people of this planet will succumb to their will and join their forces. And what's really crucial on this planet is it's a fuel station. There's lots of fuel. It's kind of, again, pivotal in terms of like its location and proximity to, you know, everything else that's going on during the Clone Wars. And so the Separatists want this planet, and the Bad Batch have been dispatched here to kind of put an end to this weapon. And there's a little debate back and forth about what a weapon is. This is where I think tech gets really tech-ish, you know, talking about, you know, what a weapon really is. It can mean a lot of different things, et cetera, because, you know, in Wrecker's mind, he's thinking, oh, it's a big bomb, probably anything else for him, right? It's going to blow up.
Right.
And it turns out that really this weapon is like this massive creature.
Monster of the Week time again.
Yeah, Monster of the Week time for the Bad Batch. It's almost like a Rancor was like, I don't know, doing like CrossFit or something. That's kind of what you got here. This big hulking creature that's in this panel, like it picks up as though they had already encountered this. He said something about, I think Hunter, somebody makes a comment about Hunter saying, did you expect that mountain to kind of slow it down? But it barrels through a mountain. I mean, it's pretty big, but they don't give us that context, right? Outside of that one mention, but that was my take, and maybe I read it wrong. But was that yours as well?
Yeah, that was mine as well. And I agree with you. Even when we have a front and center of the beast, which kind of reminds me of like the Snake Man from the Masters of the Universe, like the early 2000s series a little bit. Because we've got to make it about Motu.
Yeah, okay.
A little bit like that. But to get the idea of the scale didn't really come through until we get a smaller panel in the page, and we see Wrecker running and kind of luring it along, and you see this creature is taller, or at least as tall as probably some 2-story buildings.
Right. And
has kind of a snake-like body, but like you said, has been really hitting the roids pretty hard.
Yeah.
And is roid raging through this town, this fuel depot. So how this creature was supposed to, you know, motivate people to join the Separatists, I'm not entirely sure how that works, because there doesn't seem to be any dialogue from this creature. It just seems to be wreaking havoc, but, you know, whatever. You know, Star Wars is Star Wars sometimes, but again, another Monster of the Week, and Wrecker's bait as usual, and he's complaining the entire time.
Yeah. So they sent him down to like a fuel station, and they want Wrecker to lure that this beast into this fuel station area. And once they've got him down there, Crosshair then takes a shot, and there's a funny moment in there, like, "What are you going to hit?" And he's like, "Man," I'm paraphrasing, but he says, "It's a fuel station. Like, you shoot anywhere, that thing is going to go up." And so, sure enough, he fires a shot, blows up the whole thing. I'm assuming killing the creature, or I don't know, I'm not really sure, but enough
Seems
to
like
end the mission, right? And so we get a funny panel there where Wrecker's finally crawling. You know, he's coming back up to the top of the mountain where the other guys are, and he's asking if it's, you know, can they have basically get a juice block and a snack, because he wants to take a break since he just took the brunt of that explosion for the most part.
Right.
And then they get a call. They get a call from Mace Windu, who says they need to come out back to Coruscant because they've got another mission for them. So nice little introduction, kind of, you know, again, like you brought up the Monster of the Week. Everybody kind of played their role in this. It's really not a long, drawn out kind of thing, but it's just to kind of get you back in that Bad Batch spirit and mood as we get into the meat and potatoes of what they're going to be asked to do.
Yeah, it's kind of a good, I think they called that a cold start or something.
Cold start,
like that.
warm start, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we cut over to Coruscant, and this is where Mace Windu, they meet him. He basically says that, look, there are people that we call ghost agents, and these are the guys that do all the espionage work, right? They're out there in the galaxy collecting data, you know, getting secrets, and we've got a list of them, which,
yeah, sure.
I mean, huh?
Yeah, sure. I mean, why wouldn't you have a list of them
yeah.
that was easily stolen on Coruscant, right?
It's similar to like the list of the young, you know, the young Jedi and Force sensitives and stuff that we had back there.
Well, I think Mission Impossible had a movie like this too, where a list of all of their ghost agents or whatever were.
Oh, that's right. In fact, I think that was the
stolen.
name of that movie, Ghost Agent or something like that. But
Well, they had one called Ghost Protocol, which I think was something else. But yeah, there was
Okay.
another one that I think was about their list of agents.
Yeah. All right. Well, they've got this list. They keep this master list, and somehow, somewhere, someone has broken into Republic space, Republic, whatever, armories, wherever the bases, and stolen this list. And their mission is essentially just to look, this guy, whoever it was that broke in and stole this list, their ship was reportedly badly damaged, and so they don't have a way to get off Coruscant. And so Mace Windu's whole mission here is that they need to go figure out where this guy is and try to stop them before they leave, because with this list, they're compromised, right? They're all these people that have been doing this work for them are suddenly out there in the open. That could be used and leveraged against them, and it could kind of turn the tide of the war, if you will, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting, like, Windu and the Jedi, it was almost like tongue in cheek of like, oh, they're spies. And the Bad Batch just kind of calls them for what they are, and Windu corrects them as ghost agents. It's just like the Jedi to color it and try to qualify what is really spies as something else, so it doesn't make them. Maybe it's just for their own egocentric way of viewing things. Of like, no, they're not. They're doing the Republic's work here. They're protecting the galaxy. They're doing no, they're spies. Let's just call it what it is. But Jedi have to kind of make themselves feel better about what they're doing.
And at that point, Mace is, again, he ends that and says, good luck to you guys. And don't forget that, innocent lives are counting on them, which Hunter replies back, they always are, sir.
They always are.
Yeah. So, again, another just little notch in the timeline to kind of remind us of what's going on and what their role is going on. So, okay. So they then decide that, okay, well, we're going to go to the scum and villainy of Coruscant, which is in the lower levels.
Yeah, Windu gives them a tip that they can't get off, and so they should still be on. They kind of give a tip off screen, I think, is what Windu does, of kind of where to start.
Yeah,
we didn't get that into a chat bubble a little bit later on.
It's a little bit later on. They just kind of show up, and they remove their armor, and so they're donning these like civilian outfits, which are very bright and colorful. But yeah, I don't know. I never really associated like. Maybe, I guess the lower levels is always being like scum and like dirty. Everything's dirty, like from Clone Wars. But I guess there are pockets and stuff of areas that people wear this fashionable like clothing.
There's so many levels, I mean, Hunter's wearing like wraps from his, all the way from his fingers, like from his knuckles, all the way up to just above his elbows, like literally like wraps, like you would see a boxer, type of wrap kind of looks like that. And of course he's always got a scarf and his bandana on. So, great job, hiding in. The other thing I noticed, I don't think Hunter has his skull scar as prominent in these pages as what we normally have. And I don't know if that's just kind of a pain in the butt to draw over and over, but in some panels you kind of see it. In other panels, it's much less. It looks more like a 5 o'clock shadow.
So some of that's artistic too, right? Some artists will, not go into the details, but
it makes sense. Yeah.
But it's funny though, and the only reason where I even brought up the whole fashion aspect of this is because remember when we were covering the Clone Wars, we always talked about how they would just go out on these missions, these quote co-op mission or quote secretive missions, and they were still wearing all their armor, like they never would change. And it wasn't really until we got to like Pabu, I think, we finally saw them, getting back into civilian clothing and changing their look a little bit. So I like that. This is a good thing that they actually took off all of the armor to kind of blend in.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Sorry to interrupt you. It's interesting because the Bad Batch does look different than a normal clone. So it makes sense why they would pick Clone Force 99 and say, hey, go do this. Fly a little under the radar. Maybe it's a bit undercover of sorts of trying to root out this information in these lower levels. And they just assume that because they look a little bit different, that other people won't recognize them. And of course, we found out a little bit later, there are people in all sorts of levels and all sorts of lines of work that will pinpoint a clone regardless of being a little bit different than their brothers of maybe the traditional stock. They can still find a clone and point them out, and they stick out in a crowd.
Yeah. Which, as different as they look, they do stick out even now, which we'll find out here in just a minute. But nonetheless, they head over to, so this is where it's little things like this. I wish they would have given us the name of this cantina, because they made an effort to say that this was, quote, the place for any and all underhand dealings on Coruscant, right? So it feels like that it's got to have a name, and they don't give us what that name is, and I'll just get over that. But they go there because, if they're going to find this thief and they're going to try to stop that thief before they get off planet and hire, some ship to escort them out, that they're going to try to beat him to the punch. And so they're going to the same cantina and to try to stop all that. So they get into the cantina. Wrecker, wants to kind of beat up people to get the information. The entire time Hunter's like, look, we got to lay low, right? We can't be making a big fuss about this.
We can't spook them, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what they're trying to say. We just can't spook them out there, because then things get much more difficult.
And he even tells Wrecker, like, you can't blow stuff up, which I love the fact that they keep coming back to that, because it's, very much well within character. But nonetheless, from there, Hunter then goes over to this barkeep, and it's a Quarren, and immediately the Quarren identifies him as a clone and is like, hey, we don't serve your kind. I mean, it's very similar to A New Hope in that they don't serve their kind here. The patrons of the bar start noticing that these guys are clones as well. And so they start jumping in like, hey, get out of our bar. We don't want you in here, kind of thing. And it feels like things are really about to escalate until Crosshair steps in and does his little Crosshair thing. So why don't you...
Yeah, he comes in and he takes a crack shot or something like that, right? And he just kind of like poses and has his gun up around his shoulder, and you know the next shot I fire is going to take out all 6 of you. They've been outed already, and he's like, okay, well, we're going to flex this muscle. We'll go ahead and flex this muscle and do it. And he's got this smugness to him that's just classic Crosshair, that confidence that he has. And this is before all of the things happen in the Bad Batch series, right, where he's damaged, and this is him in his prime, and we know what he's capable of doing. And him taking a quick shot, he bounces it off like a window and off a glass, and destroys a cup that's in front of the bartender. So just to show off the skill before he huffs his chest out there and is like, any other questions? Why don't you go ahead and give us what we want to know?
Yeah, I mean, this is like, again, typical Crosshair, the trick shot stuff that he would do in the episodes. We got to see him do it here. And of course, this is enough to get those guys to start coughing up some information, especially the barkeep, who basically tells them, oh, by the way, so while this is going on, I should mention, they show the hand of someone, and the barkeep is really hesitant to say anything. He wants to help them out because he's intimidated, but at the same time, he makes a comment about how there are other people listening, right? And so right around that moment, we see a green hand of some sort. They focus in on it. We'll come to find out who that is here in just a little bit. But the barkeep says that there was a ship that came by about a few hours ago asking for the same thing. And the barkeep sent him somewhere, and that's the information that he relays over to Hunter and the Bad Batch. So they head out to this location where apparently this getaway ship is, and they find it. It's sitting there, has not taken off yet. They're back in their full armor at this point as well, so they're no longer in their civilian clothing. And there's 2 guards that are out in front of the ship, guarding it, protecting it, making sure nobody boards it or takes off. And so Hunter Crosshair then goes and snipes both of them. He doesn't kill them. He just stuns them.
These are stun shots, right? Yeah.
Yep, stun shots to take them out. So we're not going to get into the whole debate about whether they're using stuns or killing. That was a lot of discussion during the
I'm going to go with that. They're probably quieter shots.
Yeah. So he takes out those guys, and he sees the person like through his scope. He can see the person that they're after. We don't know. In this issue, we don't find out who they are or what they do or anything. But he definitely notices that he does board the ship. And so at that point, they decide that they're going to have to go down there on foot. Like they run down they're up high when they're taking the shots. And so they run out and down onto the landing area and try to stop him because the ship's about to take off. And so they're going to try to stop the ship if they can, since they can't really do anything to kind of blow it up.
Right. Yeah. And this is where they run into a bit of a trap here. So Tech gets stunned, like electrocuted, and is taken, kind of disabled temporarily, or at least knocked on his butt. And even Wrecker is hit with something, right? It doesn't really clear what it is in the panel. He's kind of getting sideswiped with something to his head that's knocking his head back.
Somebody hit him or sucker punched him or somehow.
Yeah, and we'll find out what it is here in just a second, of course, when we find out who the character is that's doing the damage. But all of a sudden they're under attack, and this was unexpected, right? That they would have competition or protection or whatever it might be, that they're just not quite sure what they're up against yet. They just thought they could storm in. And I think back to the character that they're chasing, we see them in kind of this purplish robe, like a hood is over the top. It looks like some sort of mask they're wearing. So again, no discerning features there. So we don't know what species, what race, whatever it might be, to understand anything about the character that they're chasing, or who might actually be under this. That might be someone that either we know, or we'll come to find out maybe they're a new character or something like that. So no real indication as to who we're chasing.
Yeah. And of course, we get the big reveal, at least for this issue. And this person that has been attacking them is none other than Embo, which is a character that appeared in, he's been in comics, been in the Clone Wars, and he's rumored to be in the Mandalorian series, the movie that's coming out. So I know that's a rumor. There's nothing official. But Embo, for anybody that doesn't know, is that Qzon. He's got the big hat, almost looks like a I don't know, kind of like a big Asian hat or whatever, and they're like a green race. Well, I think there are other colors too, but definitely he's green. And he's got his dog, which I forgot his name already.
Is it I think it's an Anuba, and it's Marok, right? So the same as the character from Ahsoka,
but not the same person. But
so it's a dog-like creature, big old bat-like ears and kind of a bat-like snout, but this white fur, kind of a menacing character. Actually, it's really cool. And the panel where we are introduced to Embo has a nice one. He's posing with his crossbow, and he's got his his pet with him, and it's kind of a cool reveal, if you will. So we're assuming that Wrecker was probably hit by his helmet and by his hat. He threw it at him because we know he can use this as a weapon and it's deadly. So he hitting Wrecker in the chest and head to kind of knock him back seems like a reasonable assumption there.
Yeah. He also goes on to tell the Bad Batch that he's after the same thing, right? So he's after this list as well as them. So interesting to know who he's working for, right? Or it would be interesting to know who he's working for, who he's been hired by. A fight breaks out at this point, right? There's a battle. There's they're pew-pewing all over the place, and there's a moment in there where Merrick goes and attacks Hunter. That's one where I was kind of like, man, I don't know, the shaping is weird on that panel. It didn't, it looks kind of rushed in my opinion, but it's all fine. The ship ends up taking off, and at that point, the Embo tells him that he's going to go back. It tells them to go back to the Clone Wars, and then he takes off in his own ship. And so they're kind of stranded there. They don't have any ship now. Embo's gone. The person who has the list of ghost agents is now left, and they're standing there. And Hunter has this idea of like going up. He goes over to one of the guards that they had stunned earlier on, flips him over, and it turns out that that guard is a Pike. And so that makes him to believe that, okay, well, if it's a Pike, then there's only one logical place we can go at this point, which is Kessel. And that's how the comic ends. So their next mission is going to be heading to Kessel. We've got Embo involved. We've got this other character involved. Like the dynamics there. And yeah, it was, again, good start.
Yeah, I mean, it's setting us up to where we need to, what we're going to do and where we're going to be. And I think the nice thing about it is not necessarily, the story's not super original in that way, but it just feels like a continuation of some of the stories that we have tended to enjoy, both on the screen, on the page, and content like this, I think typically does pretty well. And it usually delivers on some level of enjoyment, even if it's just kind of casual enjoyment, which I think is totally fine. Embo's a cool character. I'm glad that they found a way to bring him back in. I think this works really well on the page, especially with the comics. They can do a lot with the colors. The color saturation here is actually really quite good as well. Like you said, some of the art is very subjective, what you're going to like. The story is moving along at a quick pace, but it doesn't feel rushed necessarily. I think, even though it's moving along, it's not getting in its own way, which I think is kind of nice. It's cool. Embo is speaking in his own native tongue, so you get kind of weird language in the chat bubbles. Tech is having to decipher it for them as well, which I think is a nice little touch. And again, they're figuring out things that we would be like, well, how the heck are they going to figure out where to go? And like you said, with the Pike, they realized that the ship must have been something regarding spice. So they're hiring the Pikes, and the Pikes we know from lots of other content, are always for hire and always for something, especially for transporting type of things like they were doing in Book of Boba Fett.
Right.
So this, it's all pretty consistent with what we've seen in other pieces of material across the Star Wars landscape. So I think that's pretty, that's pretty good. Again, nothing super deep to go into all this. Like, it's interesting to ask who's hiring Embo, though. How did Embo find out? How did Embo's employer know that this list was out there and that it was stolen, and who stole it? And we could probably speculate a little bit about who would want this list. And quite honestly, I think the person at the top of this list is probably Palpatine, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we know he's playing both sides. So it would make sense that he wants to root some of these out to create holes in the Republic for, all of his nefarious reasons.
Yeah. I mean, the Pike Syndicate themselves could be after this, right, as leverage. I don't know if they want to do anything with it, right? But they could use it to extort something from the Republic in some way, or use it as leverage for something to get bargains later down the road. Any one of the crime syndicates, even, the Hutts and Black Sun and everybody else that's still running around during this time are all possible candidates there that could have hired Embo. Just quickly, the publisher summary for the next issue says the Bad Batch race bounty hunter Embo to recover stolen intelligence that could compromise Republic spies everywhere. Their mission brings them face to face with the nefarious Pike Syndicate, a notorious gang of spice smugglers that poses a serious threat to the clones. Will the Bad Batch escape with their lives before Embo flees with the intel? The Republic War effort depends on it. So
yeah,
there you go. Setting up issue number 2. And I know you mentioned it earlier. What did you say? Is this monthly and is like consistently, or is it
yeah, it's effectively monthly, right? And the schedule is a little bit weird just because of the way the dates fall with February. So here's the release schedule as far as we are aware. So today was issue 1. Today's February 12th. Issue 2 will come out April 2nd. 3 will come out April 30th, so roughly 4 weeks later.
Okay.
Issue 4 will come out May 28th, and then issue 5 has not been announced yet as far as I've been able to find, but probably end of June this series will wrap up. So it's monthly. It's about every 4 weeks, and just the way that the dates fall at the release schedule looks a little funny on paper, but it's about every 4 weeks or so.
Okay. On that note, probably maybe I should have covered this at the top of the show. Jonesy and I were kind of talking about this last night. I think our approach to comics is because sometimes we will cover a first issue and we don't circle back on it. And that, we know and acknowledge that it's not the coolest experience. So I think what we've committed is, look, we'll cover the first issues on some of these. We can't do them all, but on the ones that we do cover, we will come back and do the rest of the series as kind of a whole, right? So you'll get we'll get one episode that covers the very first issue. Once the series is over and we've got all of them, we'll come back and kind of wrap it up and see where it went and talked about it, did the whole breakdown kind of thing, but not do a monthly breakdown of every single episode or every issue that comes out. We just don't have the bandwidth to do it. And the scheduling would be kind of weird for us, especially when we've got other conflicting things and TV shows going on and news and all that stuff. So yeah, that's the plan.
Thanks for the feedback on YouTube. We had a couple, you and I were both having conversations with some folks on YouTube. So thanks for posting in the comments, letting us know your thoughts, what you're interested in, what gets you excited about this stuff and what you'd like to see. We really do take it to heart, and we do pay attention, and we try to see if this is something that we're able to deliver on, and also where we're maybe we're falling a little short about what we want to do too, and we need to have some commitments there.
Yeah.
We'll go back and take a look at. So thanks for the feedback. We really do appreciate that. We enjoy getting that from y'all.
I want to cover one up's got a question here. Is Quinlan Voss a ghost agent? I wonder if he shows up here and they tie Dark Disciple into the Bad Batch.
One Up versus CPU, I love you so much. Like
I know you got great ideas. They don't ever do them. And this
but I'll say this though. I will say this though. Hyperspace Stories and Dark Horse have done Quinlan Voss stuff before.
They have. They love Quinlan Voss.
They do. They love these other characters, right? That don't get enough love. And is this going to feed Dark Disciple? I would not hold your breath on that one. But is there always opportunity? I think there's always something. And to see the Bad Batch cross paths with Quinlan Voss, absolutely would love to see this. I think that would be really cool. And yeah, some of these names kind of surface and are known to us. And even if they're not known to the bad guys necessarily, that the Bad Batch would kind of stumble across them and others would join the crusade would be kind of fun and interesting, as long as we don't get out of control with some of that. But I think Quinlan Voss, maybe the general question though, Albert, would he be considered a ghost agent? He kind of seems like maybe in some ways, right?
Oh yeah, I think it fits him 100%.
If the Jedi are even considered as much, they're truly kind of undercover embedded. But I don't know if a ghost agent is just a Republic person or if it's Jedi too. But yeah,
that's exactly where my head's at too. Like it feels like this. The way I interpreted this list was these are the Republic's ghost agents. The Jedi have their own. And it may only be Quinlan Voss, quite honestly, but that name isn't probably shared with the Republic. I think the Jedi have their own, initiatives and operatives and things that they want to do, and that's Quinlan Voss for this kind of work. Now, that's not to say that he could have found out about this and said, look, because they're what I do, I have a vested interest in going and protecting them, or maybe his name is on the list. I think it's possible that he could show up in the series, and you make a great point because I hadn't thought about that. They do bring Quinlan Voss in quite a bit, not all the time, but he does show up in Hyperspace Stories or in comics on the Dark Horse side of things. So it would be great. I'd love to see him in there.
I'll draw your attention to another book that we really enjoyed, and that was John Jackson Miller's The Living Force. And we saw some characters. It was a Adipa Balaba that was undercover a little bit there too, and some of these syndicates have come in and out of stories like that. So could there be a little cross-pollination? I'm going to put that percentage really low, but do we see characters like that pop up even from a Jedi perspective? I think it's possible, but I'm with you. I think these are maybe more Republic-oriented folks, maybe less than Jedi, but that there would be some cross-pollination between them, I think is still entirely possible. And Hyperspace Stories, this is how they get people in the door. They have these really cool, exciting covers, and and bringing characters that we don't get to see as often to the fore. And I think these are really cool opportunities to be able to do that. Embo is another great example of that, besides the Bad Batch in particular. So
All right. Yeah.
I think opportunity is there, and I think those cards are on the table as far as possible. Likelihood, perhaps a little bit low, but I think it all possible with Dark Horse, which I think is really what makes Dark Horse kind of cool and special.
Yeah. That's kind of been their little niche thing, bringing in characters that you don't, giving them the spotlight, if you will.
Absolutely.
But yeah, anytime we get the Bad Batch, always great. Again, this comic I think they did them right, did them justice in terms of making sure they were true to the characters that we loved and grew up with, if you will. So yeah, good start. And we'll see where the series goes.
Yeah. So huge thanks to everyone who came out on the live stream tonight. Music Train, One vs. CPU, Sky, Fall Asleep Fast, Steph, and Gary Smith. Fall Asleep Fast coming in from Australia, I believe. So thanks for the early morning out there. So good day. And appreciate everyone coming out. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. If you're listening, we'd love to have you join us.
Okay. Let's see. You already mentioned it, but we'll be back on Sunday with our Patreon episode, and then we're going to continue to do our planning. We've got another planning session this weekend, and we've got some exciting stuff. A lot of cool ideas that we're playing with here for 2025 So
yeah,
more
content. A lot of things that hope and interact with folks a little bit more too. So yeah, exciting things. We'll see what all makes the what doesn't hit the cutting room floor, but it is going to be an exciting 2025. So we hope you all pay attention or tune in and join us for it. Not pay attention. That sounds really ridiculous.
Pay attention to what we're doing.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah. Thanks for everyone for the feedback. Hey, leave us feedback. What are you looking to hear? What are you looking to see? What do you want to know? Right? What's going on? Give us that feedback too. We work that into our plans.
Yep. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you all on the next episode.